Manx Radio's Update with Christian Jones.
Fastamai, good afternoon. It's 5 o'clock on Wednesday, the 8th of October. I'm Christian Jones and this is Update. Welcome into 30 minutes of all the latest news, sport and travel compiled from the resources of Manx Radio's newsroom. On the way tonight, Union Unite has rejected the latest pay offer, leading to an independent arbitrator being brought in to help settle the dispute. The government's new AI office plans are under fire, with critics saying they lack detail. And at the age of 80, would you swim 5 kilometres? One Ramsey resident is doing just that to raise funds in memory of his late wife. As always, drop me a message if you want to say hello. Text WhatsApp to 166 177. Email studio@manxradio.com. But first, let's get the latest with Simon Richardson. Fastamai, Simon.
Fastamai. The waiting time for a car or motorcycle test in the Isle of Man currently stands at between 5 and 6 weeks. The figure, which was provided to Manx Radio by the DOI, is in stark contrast to the UK, where the average wait time is around 22 weeks. Data released in the UK this week shows 668,000 learner drivers are currently waiting for a test slot, the highest number on record. New rules have come into force that mean dogs imported to the Isle of Man from Romania must be tested for a rare disease that can be passed on to humans. Potential owners must now ensure their animal has tested negative for the condition Brucella canis at least 30 days before arriving on the island. Ramsey's minor injuries unit is to stay closed at the weekends until further notice due to costs. Health Minister Claire Christian says reopening the facility would require agency staff, resulting in extra costs and a potential overspend. International news. Counter-terror police have revealed Manchester synagogue killer Jihad al-Shami pledged allegiance to the Islamic State group in a call to them. Officers say investigations are continuing at pace following the deaths of 2 worshippers last Thursday. Kemi Badenoch says she'd abolish stamp duty and put half of government savings towards reducing the deficit if she became Prime Minister. The Conservative leaders thanked members for standing by the party amid defections to reform. And finally, former FBI Director James Comey has pleaded not guilty to lying in Congress. It's over evidence he gave in 2020 about probes into Hillary Clinton's emails and election interference by Russia. That's the news. More news at 6 o'clock.
Good reminder. Thank you very much for that, Simon. 6 o'clock is the right one. Yes, let's take a look at the weather now. Brought to you by Manx Glass and Glazing. Dry, partly cloudy with sunny intervals, moderate westerly wind and maximum temperature of 15 degrees Celsius. Tomorrow, though, cloudy start in the morning with a risk of some drizzly outbreaks of rain, then becoming mainly dry, although staying largely cloudy, light to moderate westerly wind and a top temperature of 16 degrees Celsius.
Manx Glass and Glazing can supply and install single, double and triple glazing. Call 674 573 or visit the showroom on the Snugborough Trading Estate.
At Zed's Bedding, we know spills, pets and kids can be tough on mattresses. Our waterproof or quilted protectors shield against everyday mess while adding comfort. Simple, effective mattress protection. Clean, fresh and longer lasting. At Zed's Bedding Ramsey.
If you run a small business or just need more room in the back, Philshaw Vehicles has the perfect van or light commercial for all your needs and can sort out any finance. Based in the Tremode Estate, view philshawvehicles.im or call 49 51 49.
Visit Ramsey Art Gallery for a fabulous range of top brand watches and stunning gold and silver jewellery, gifts for all occasions, and of course our gallery of prints and original artworks. Find all this and more at Ramsey Art Gallery, Jewellers and Engravers, opposite the RNLI shop.
Cork Hill Storage, Cork Hill Storage. Call Cork Hill Removals and Storage today. We'll store your goods day after day. Safe and secure around the clock. When it comes to storage, we do the lot. Click CorkHillRemovals.com.
You're listening to the Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
5 minutes past 5 on Manx Radio's update. First of all, I'm going to bring you the latest on the situation in Macclesfield earlier this week. Police held a meeting last night for local residents after 2 people were assaulted. Beth Espy joins me in the studio with the latest from BBC Isle of Man. Faster my Beth.
Faster my Christian. Well, the BBC say concerns were raised about how police kept the public informed about this unfolding situation in which a person was left badly injured on a beach. Now, this serious incident at Corney happened around 4 p.m. on Monday and followed earlier appeals by police about a man missing from home. Inspector Wendy Barker said there was no suggestion of a danger to the public when a high-risk missing person inquiry was launched at the weekend, but that had changed to something else on Monday afternoon. Now, one resident at this meeting questioned why the possible threat had not been communicated to residents sooner. They said, "I think everybody just feels a little bit let down in general that we weren't better informed." Police previously said they had been called to a report of a serious incident on the beach in Macclesfield on Monday afternoon. Armed officers were also called to a second alleged assault nearby where they arrested a man. Now, following this first incident, police put out a warning to people in the Ramsey, Laxey and Macclesfield areas to close their windows and lock their doors. This meeting, yesterday evening at Doon Church Hall, was organised by the Northern Neighbourhood Policing Team. The head of that team, Inspector Barker, said the aim was to reassure residents and listen to their concerns. Now, residents raised concerns because people had originally been encouraged to check their sheds or outbuildings for this missing person. And it was also pointed out that a group of people had been out on a guided walk in a nearby glen on Sunday afternoon. One resident last night suggested officers could have door-knocked in the area to warn people of any potential threat if there was any information known to the force, and it might not want to put that communication on social media for the entire island. Another added, "Somebody's been seriously injured and taken to hospital, so the strategy you employed didn't work, did it?" Now, Inspector Barker said when the appeals were put out, it was categorised as a high-risk missing person inquiry, and there had been absolutely no evidence to suggest this person was going to be violent to anybody else other than to themselves. The information, she said, came in as a missing person on the Sunday, and that changed to something else on the Monday. "I can absolutely categorically say," she said, "there was nobody in this police force here that would deliberately put something out to endanger any member of the public on this island. That is just not a thing that would ever happen." Police said a person had been seriously injured on Corney Beach on Monday. Inspector Barker said officers had put the meeting together very quickly because we were very concerned about how everybody would be after something like this, and we wanted to bring you all together to try and give you some reassurance that we are here to support. And in closing, the BBC report says the inspector also assured those at the meeting there was no specific reason why the incident that had taken place when it had.
Beth, thank you very much for that, and we will of course keep an eye on that. That is a developing story, so any new updates we will of course bring those to you. Approaching 8 minutes past 5, the Public Services Commission was celebrating earlier this year when its pay offer for the 2024 to 25 period was accepted. Now, though, the body, which employs civil and public sector workers, has been dealt a blow as its latest offer for 25-26 was rejected by Unite the Union. The offer on the table was a 3% rise, while annual leave entitlement would have been upped from 28 to 30 days for staff that had accrued 10 years service or more. I sat down with the chair of the PSC, Oncan MHK, Rob Callister, and asked how he was feeling.
Yeah, extremely disappointed, especially when Prospect Union themselves had accepted an earlier offer back in March this year. So due to that joint negotiating, bargaining sort of agreement, then what we have to do now is go to arbitration. I am apologetic to all PSC workers and to the Prospect Union, but that is the process. We'll try and complete that as quickly as possible because I think on the surface, I think 3% was a very fair offer. And we're certainly not going to change it at this stage, so we will rely now on the independent arbitration.
3% obviously is below inflation at the moment.
Yes, but it was when we started these negotiations, it actually was higher than what inflation was last year. And we've got to remember this 3% offer is on the back of a 4% offer that was agreed by the unions and the PSC back in 24-25. I've always been very clear that I wanted to get through these two negotiating periods and then sit down and have an open conversation with both unions to listen to their wider concerns.
How do you feel as if this has gone? Is this a failure to negotiate, or is it simply that unions are tying your hands?
Well, we have this joint negotiating agreement. Obviously, Prospect and ourselves are pretty much in agreement. It's just the third element, which is the Unite union. Their members have decided they don't accept the 3%. We have to respect that. What we've done, we've already gone through mediation. We sat down recently to try and work out any sort of disagreements, and I thought we'd reached a satisfactory conclusion at 3%. But what we have to do now is respect that vote, and the only way we can go forward as per the agreement is to go to arbitration.
Do you think that the workers necessarily appreciate the cost pressures that you are undoubtedly being asked to adhere to?
I think we've got to sit down and look at the cost pressures on government wages at the moment. And I absolutely respect what Unite is saying, that there is a disproportion with regard to high earners and the low earners. I've been very clear from the first day I came in November 24 that I want to sit down with the unions and listen very carefully, very clearly to what points they're trying to make, and then to look at how we reward PSC workers in the future.
When is that going to happen? Because you've obviously been the PSC chair for a substantial period of time now.
I've been in since 2024, November 2024.
It's almost a year.
I've always said that I needed to get through these two pay negotiations and then to sit down with a blank piece of paper and listen to those wider concerns. I made that offer on my very first meeting with both unions. I absolutely repeat that call again today.
Rob Callister, the chair of the Public Services Commission there. Well, as we just heard, extreme disappointment from him. It is worth noting that the union Prospect had already agreed to the offer back in March, so it's just Unite that they're waiting on. Debbie Holsall is the Regional Negotiations Officer from Unite. The PSC describes this as a generous offer, but your members don't think so, is that right?
Yeah, that's correct.
And if Prospect has accepted it, does that imply that Unite's wants are simply too demanding?
I wouldn't say so, no. I would say that it will be fair and reasonable, given they are probably a group of the lowest paid workers, or are the lowest paid workers in government.
Does this all ultimately come back to the sliding scale? Because in many ways, that is the tagline of Unite for at least the last few years. You want that sliding scale, and a percentile increase is, as you've described in the past, increasing the disparity between those on the lowest and the highest pay brackets.
Yeah, that's correct. You cannot continue to give a blanket approach of a percentage pay award, and the disparity grows the way it has grown over the last few years.
That hasn't been a new call from yourself. Why do you think that anything like that hasn't been implemented?
I have no idea. I have delivered that message when we've done our submission in peer, constantly stating, you know what, the disparity has grown. People are struggling on the wages, and 77% of the PSC workforce are on less than £46,000 a year.
Rob Callister said there was a mediation where he thought a compromise had been reached in the current offer, the 3% and the increase of annual leave. I know you can't tell members what to accept and what not to, but you can recommend. Did you recommend that they accept this latest offer?
No, I left it neutral. And just for clarity, it wasn't a mediation meeting. For all sense and purposes, it was called conciliation.
Is it fair to say that when matters reach this stage, or when members are balloted on industrial action, it suggests that the unions have failed to negotiate effectively?
No, not at all. Not at all. I think what has happened is our conversations have fell on deaf ears. I don't think they take into content or context exactly what is being delivered by our members. I don't see it as any failure, especially from a union perspective. I would see that there has been a change in the chairs of the PSC. There was a not very good coordination when it come to meetings would be cancelled, etc. The PSC, and I question, and I have been in front of them numerous times to explain the situation as to why the membership are very unhappy, is the fact that once again, the disparity, the fact that the last few years, and I would probably say the last at least 4 years, how pay claims have never even been looked at in a good light. We also give alternatives in the last claim, and this is where we are today, on the basis of a pence per hour and also a percentage. We give the figures of that, what that looked like in a sliding scale. and that has still not been taken on board.
Debbie Halsall there. That these was the regional negotiations officer from the Unite Union. Let's take a look at the travel now.
Manx Radio Travel, driven by Quayside Tyres and Service Centre.
Well, let's take a quick look at the roads to begin with. We've got temporary lights on the Old Castletown Road near the Nunnery, 24 hours a day for work on the manholes. Meanwhile, over in Santon, the Mount Murray Back Road, that's closed for the building of a concrete underpass. And over in Laxey, temporary lights on the New Road near the Queen's Hotel, 24 hours a day for sewer work. Of course, the Mountain Road remains closed from Brandywell to the Craignabbar for drainage work. Let's take a quick trip down to the steam packet. Everything's looking all good there. I'm not seeing anything out of the ordinary. Over at the airport, though, I'm seeing one thing on the departures board. That's the 6:20 Liverpool Logan Air. That was not due to be, that is delayed until 6:41, so only a small delay there. Of course, if there is anything that I've missed on the roads and you want to let me know about it, then do drop me a WhatsApp 166 177 or email to studio@manxradio.com.
Ask how you can spread the cost interest-free at
Quayside.
Get the full story. Tune in to Manx Radio's newscast for in-depth interviews behind the headlines. Find the newscast now at manxradio.com or your usual podcast provider.
Isle of Man's quintessential daily news and current affairs roundup. Update on Manx Radio.
16 minutes past 5, the Gaming Supervision Commission is warning stakeholders of the risk posed by the increasingly complex criminal landscape in East and Southeast Asia, which includes the exploitation of casinos and e-gaming platforms. The move is in parallel with a recently published threat alert from the United Nations Office on Drugs and Crime. Simon Richardson has been looking through this. He joins us now in the studio. First of all, Simon, how concerned should companies in the sector be about this?
Faster, my Christian. Well, the Isle of Man's GSC was ahead of the game on this and issued its own national risk analysis on the subject in May this year, well ahead, in fact, of the UNODC. They've now published key insights from the report to assist operators. In terms of risk, the regulatory body highlights the dangers of criminal syndicates investing in casinos, what they call junket operations, and online gaming platforms through the strategic infiltration of vulnerable jurisdictions.
If these criminal operators invest in casinos and online gaming platforms, do we know what the likely threat is there?
Well, the real concern is that such investments would then serve as fronts for money laundering, underground banking and cyber-enabled fraud. It's known that so-called special economic zones in Cambodia, Myanmar and the Philippines have become hubs for scam centres, illegal casinos and trafficking operations. A GSC case study highlights events in Timor-Leste, where crime groups managed to embed illicit operations within legitimate economic frameworks. Now, in late August, Timor-Leste's authorities carried out a series of raids and uncovered a complex web of criminal activities with links to companies and individuals, along with the so-called 14K triad.
So, I guess a real need for vigilance globally then.
Most definitely, Christian, and the GSC is continually monitoring the international landscape for emerging threats and sharing information with shareholders.
Simon, thank you very much for that. Let's turn our attention now to artificial intelligence because Ramsey MHK Laurie Hooper says the government's new AI office sounds good on paper, but questions remain about what it will actually do. He's told us the announcement feels disconnected from previous plans and light on detail. The proposal was one of several unveiled at the recent government conference. Mr. Hooper has been explaining to me what his thoughts are on these announcements.
Most of it is political theatre. Like I said in the article, quite a few people have described it to me as a circus, which is where the title of the article came from. But yeah, it's just bizarre. I mean, I've got no problem with government making U-turns, undoing things they shouldn't have done in the first place. I've got no problem with government announcing things. But you shouldn't try and represent things you've already decided to do as if they're brand new policy announcements. You shouldn't be announcing things as if they are big ticket items when actually it's just business as usual. And they certainly shouldn't be announcing things on the fly, on the hoof. that contradict previous government policy that actually could do more harm than good. It all feels like it was all about trying to get that PR, trying to get those headlines, and didn't really feel like anything they announced that was really going to be of much benefit to people on the island. And how are these things going to make people's lives better? And the answer is, I have no idea what half the announcements were really about, let alone what they're going to achieve for people.
Let's turn to some of the announcements, because I think one of the biggest announcements that was made was this National Office for Artificial Intelligence Development and Regulation. You've criticised that, saying it's vague, disconnected from existing policy. What would you have liked to have seen instead?
Well, just about anything, actually. So to me, it sounds very much like AI is the new trendy buzzword. You throw AI in front of something and it sounds great. But really, how much expertise do we have in artificial intelligence on the Isle of Man? You look at regulation of this around the world. Big tech-heavy jurisdictions like the US and the EU, they are struggling to understand how to best regulate artificial intelligence. And somehow the Isle of Man is going to steal a march on these places. I find that difficult to believe, if I'm honest. But I don't know where we'll get the expertise from. I don't know how much this is going to cost. I don't know what it's trying to achieve. That's the one thing that was missing from that announcement was, okay, what is this office actually going to do? What are they going to be delivering for us? It's just not there. Absolutely missing from that. And that's what I mean about there not being any substance. It's a great headline. It makes a great 30-second soundbite on Manx Radio. But actually, when you scratch at the surface, there's just nothing there.
Well, that's Ramsey MHK Laurie Hooper speaking there. Manx Radio has approached the government for comment. So far, we haven't had anything back. And also, we don't have any detail on what the AI office would operate, how it would operate, how much it would cost. So naturally, we would be keen to find out more. Now, later this month, 2 services for new parents are going to be provided by Manx Care again. From the 16th, face-to-face parent craft courses will return, which covers what to expect in labour and beyond. Meanwhile, midwives will also be providing home visits instead of asking families to come to them. Jan Uliat is a retired midwife who's been hosting face-to-face classes in their absence and campaigning for them to be reinstated. She told Amy Griffiths she's thrilled to see Manx Care has listened.
Oh yeah, I was absolutely just over the moon when I heard that they were definitely bringing them back. We'd always heard that it was going to be in the autumn, but we weren't too sure when. So yeah, really, really pleased.
Because you've been running your antenatal classes in the meantime as a bit of a stopgap. And how well attended have those been?
Yeah, they've been really well attended. We probably had on average about 15 couples. So there was definitely a need out there. So I'm under no illusion that the classes going forward for the Manx Care will be well attended.
And of course, another thing that you have been campaigning for is the reinstatement of the home visits by midwives, which is something that Manx Care has also confirmed.
Oh, honestly, I'm just so pleased for the women going forward now that are going to start getting their home visits, because not for all women, but certainly for first-time mums, you really don't know what to expect. You feel very sometimes lost, extremely vulnerable, terrified. They're all feelings that I had when I had my first baby. I honestly wasn't dressed for about the first 4 weeks. I found that very difficult, but what got me through it was the fact that my midwife came and saw me regularly, and kept saying to me, "You're doing really well. This is normal. This is how it is sometimes with a first baby." So if I hadn't have had that support, I don't know what I would have done really. And I just feel that women need those first few weeks to rest, to bond with their baby and to just heal themselves, because it's very traumatic going through labour and birth. You might have had a long drawn out birth that's gone on for 24, 36 hours. And then in the next day, you're expected to, drive maybe from Ramsey back to Douglas just to go for a half an hour appointment. So, yeah, I'm just really relieved that women aren't going to be put in that position anymore.
Right, we'll be turning our attention to sport in just a moment, but first, a Ramsey man is marking his 80th birthday by taking on a major fundraising challenge for Hospice Isle of Man. Barry Johnson plans to swim 5 kilometres, that's 200 lengths of Ramsey swimming pool, at the end of this month, hoping to raise £5,000 in memory of his late wife Muriel. He's been speaking to Chanel Suku.
Well, it's because Muriel was in there. She had Alzheimer's and vascular dementia, so I was looking after her for 10 years and really not able to go out. I know on one occasion I paid £70 just for somebody to sit with her so I could go for a swim. The last 18 months of her life she had to go into care. I was told it was unsafe for her and me. But she spent last October 3 weeks in Nobles and declined rapidly, and then spent her last 5 days in the hospice. And that was a real comfort for the family and for me.
How are you preparing? How are you gearing up?
I swim twice a week. In fact, I go 3 times. I take the grandchildren to the fun session. And so I want to push it out now to the 5. I actually did 170 lengths yesterday afternoon, which is just over 4K. And I did it in 1 hour and 55 minutes. So I know I can get to the target of 5 kilometres. I mean, of course, I have a few aches and pains afterwards. But I would have aches and pains at 80 in any case.
And how do you keep yourself motivated or focused during the swim?
I do a bit a day. I count the length, but I daydream as well until somebody else comes in the lane, and then it's a bit of disturbance. But it is a comfort having water around your head. It might sound surprising to people, but I think for folk that do swim regularly, they'll know what I mean. It was particularly apparent to me after COVID, when we weren't able to do many things, and certainly in my own situation. Yeah, to be in the water and warm water around your head, it's something special, actually.
Well, I don't know about you, but that many lengths, 200 at age 80, couldn't be me. I could probably manage that too. Right, let's turn our attention to sport. Faster my Rob Pritchard.
Faster my Christian. First off, FC Isle of Man head on their travels in the NWCFL Premier Division this evening in what will be caretaker manager Rick Holden's second match in charge of the side. Following a narrow defeat at home to Barnoldswick Town last weekend, the Ravens head to South Liverpool for a 7:45pm kickoff at Jericho Lane. Heading into tonight's meeting, FC Isle of Man remain just 1 position and 1 point above the relegation zone, and with just 2 wins from their opening 14 games. For South Liverpool, it'll be their first outing in 2 weeks after their league tie at Wythenshawe FC last weekend was postponed due to poor weather conditions. Whilst FC Isle of Man do still reside above the top 2, the teams immediately around them have either 1 or 2 games in hand on the Islanders. And depending on other results, FC Isle of Man could move up as many as 2 places with a win on Merseyside. Their hosts, meanwhile, have had a steady start to the campaign and sit 13th in the league with 6 wins from their first 12. In athletics, several Ireland competitors are already confirmed to be racing out in the USA this weekend for the Chicago Marathon. Isle of Man women's marathon record holder Krista Kane is expected to be involved. The others due to make the journey are Steph Chambers, Jane Farquhar, Bernie Johnson, Jeff Moore, Sean Nesbitt, Simon Scott and Helen Taylor. Sunday's race is considered by some to be among the world's major marathon events. And also in athletics, the opening round of this year's Northern AC Winter Series took place in Ramsey last night. The 1.7km race was won by Northern AC's Stephen Oates, and in the longer 5km event, Manx Harriers runner Ryan Corrin took top spot.
Good reminder, thank you very much for that, Rob. Well, that's it for Update this evening. Thanks very much to newsreader Simon Richardson. Stick around. Up next, Spotlight with Howard Kane. Chris Kinley has greatest hits after that. Andy Wint back on the air from 9 with Country Roads. Then, of course, last but not least, Dave Moore with After Hours. I'll be back with you tomorrow, same time. So until then, take care. Bye-bye for now.